Okay, technology. Um, ooh, we've got a cool topic.
Okay.
I mean, it's your idea.
Masculinity. It's something that I kind of ponder from time to time. And I'm not any kind of an expert or an authority on anything about divine nature of masculine or feminine or anything like that. But I did grow up in kind of a toxic masculinity sort of environment, just being a Gen Xer in a small town, family stuff as well. So I kind of was brought up with that sort of background of sort of alpha male, masculinity and the definitions of that in my life. And then, like, over once I started sort of questioning my own beliefs on things, that was something that came up, like, because it's the way most people engage with masculinity. It's like an authoritative, or they need to have a power structure or something like that, or manipulate situations so that they're sort of coming out ahead or something like that, uh, with diminishing the femininity aspect of themselves and of others too. So it's like, the more and more I see that dynamic, the more I'm realizing that that's not what masculinity is, and that true masculinity, I think, is a protector, of everybody, of life, of the creative nature of femininity. But I don't have like super, like, thought out thoughts on it. You know what I mean?
Neither do I.
Okay.
I didn't prepare at all for this.
I did a little bit of research, but, like, I don't want to go into this with somebody else's point of view. I think it's important to come from within on these things, because it really is a personal journey, that divine masculinity or divine femininity, or whatever that you're touching energetically. It's a personal experience, I think, which I think we
Truly.
all have that.
Yeah, truly. I can really only speak from my experience too. And my opinions have been changing quite a lot too. There's definitely a system built for us in this world, in this day and age, to view men particularly like in this way. So in regards to divine masculinity, I do see that men are the physical representation of divine masculinity, but the fact that we are all dualistic, and it's balancing the divine masculine and feminine within ourselves. And usually what I see in regards to like healing the divine masculinity and femininity is I tend to reflect on how my parents, how my parents raised me, and then reflecting on leaders or people whom I was inspired by growing up, teachers, um, men, women, all across the board. The ability, I feel like I've grown over time to feel like divine masculinity is the healthy urge to take charge of an inspired thought or feeling that we have, like something within us, which is like usually like the instinct, the intuition of the divine feminine part within us, like it's establishing a security in a sense to, oh, this is what you want to do, let's do it, let's act upon it. The second guessing, I notice, tends to happen when the second guessing, like, I feel like that second guessing part of us is the part of us that is particularly attacking the divine masculine. That, oh, are you sure you really want to do this? And it kind of keeps you stunted. like afraid to act, afraid to do anything at all. And then you end up in kind of like an unhealthy receptive mode to where you're 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 too scared or judged to do, or yeah, feeling too judged to do anything, and you're just in kind of like a numb, like protecting your, I guess you'd say, your divine feminine, but without action. It's just feeling numb. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to different stages in my life where I've felt like that, where it was like, I was afraid to do the things that I knew should be done. Like, we all have our own intuition on, what would be beneficial for our lives or beneficial for the people in our inner circle, our family and friends and work associates and things like that. I've been at a point where I wanted to do certain things, make certain changes, or create some things, and then I was sort of held back by my fear of being perceived in any kind of a way, whether it be positive or negative. It was like a fear of being perceived, of being seen, of putting myself out there, or whatever the case might be. But that's also, I think, I feel like, the divine feminine is, in my in the way I see it, is like a vessel. Like the feminine is the chalice, right? And that's the space that holds all things. And then the masculine part is the things within the space. So the femininity holds all things together, and then the masculine is more of the things, the doing of the nature of things. And um, to your point, yeah, if you're not like in touch with your own divine masculine nature, then you'll not kind of be able to experience doing the things that you need to do or that you'd like to do, if that makes sense.
How do you think and feel people can better strengthen their divine masculine energy, particularly in this society? What what do you think people need to know about themselves to be aware of um, taking healthy action in their own lives and embodying divine masculine energy?
It's it takes a lot of inner soul searching, I think, to be able to question your own masculinity or sense of masculinity. There's so many examples of not healthy masculine out there. There's, the Andrew Tate of the world. There's others like that. The current political state of the United States at the moment is very hyper toxic masculinity. And it's very fear based. So it's hard for somebody who's, I think, in that state of being, because they feel like they need to protect themselves by being overtly like masculine. It's a defense mechanism is what it is. And they might feel like it kind of props them up in some kind of a way, but it kind of shows the weakness in that sense of masculinity as it is. So, I think for men, at least in my experience, it might take kind of being broken to the point of wanting to see things in a different light. You know, for myself, growing up in the 90s as a nine, like I was born in the 70s, so I was a Gen Xer, and back then there was just a lot of masculine stuff going on, at least in the town that I was in. It was more like, people calling each other names, even friends, like you'd call them disparaging names or whatever. Like, it was the culture to just kind of, I don't really know how to put this, but it was very sort of aggressive in relationships and things like that. And if you showed your kind of a softer side, you'd be labeled as, a fairy or something like that. Um, and that was a huge like dynamic between men and women back then, that women needed to be just super feminine, girly girl, and guys should be masculine, guy's guy. And that was it. And if you were anything in between, then it was not fitting into that model of society, I think, for most people at the time. But over the years, I don't know if it's a function of getting older or just broadening my horizons, talking to different people in different backgrounds and different situations. But I've come to see that's a false, dynamic. It's a false way to look at things. And I appreciate people who've gone through that kind of a change in their own person where they can adopt more of a healthy masculine aspect, which is, again, to be the protector, to be the guardian, the one who kind of keeps everything sort of safe. Everybody should feel safe with the divine masculine, right? Yeah, I talk to lots of women who will let me know that they're afraid to walk down the street at certain times of day or alone, because they're afraid what some man is going to say to them, or they're just afraid to be taken advantage of in some kind of a way. And it's saddening to me that that kind of a thing exists. Women should be able to look to the men of the world to be their protectors, I feel. So once people, can maybe get to a breaking point within their own lives and see that their toxic masculinity isn't really helping them or anybody else, maybe they could be open to some change. But yeah, I think ultimately it just comes down to men just being healthy masculine, and the success of that in nature with relationships and everything could be contagious.
I've seen a lot in media how healthy masculine brotherhood is is usually laughed about as gay. A lot of, you could say, a lot of like Ben Stiller, Will Ferrell type movies where, yeah, it's like having a healthy like brotherhood connection is laughable and seen as gay. There are some wonderful movies of brotherhood. End of Watch is one. Have you seen End of Watch?
I haven't seen that. I don't believe so.
It's a police officer movie. Oh my gosh. In backstory time, in MP Bullock, a two-star general, she came in and she was like, "Oh, everyone, what's your favorite movie?" And started from one room or one end of the room going to the other.
Mm-hmm.
End of watch, end of watch, end of watch, end of watch, end of watch. And people were laughing so hard that they decided to choose like random funny Disney movies, like Finding
Yeah.
Nemo. But I've definitely reflected on how media tends to distort like a healthy relationship, between people, platonic, romantic, men to men, women to women, and seeing how to to truly develop a healthy relationship with someone really only takes practice. It takes practice and takes each other holding each other accountable, strengthening each other, supporting each other, really rooted in love and wanting to see the other person grow and be the best version of themselves and coming with good intention.
I agree. Media actually kind of, I think, shaped a little bit of a change in the idea of masculinity over the years. When I was younger, um, you wouldn't say "I love you" to another guy, to your friend, or something like that. You maybe say like "love you, man" or something like that, like, but not even really. Or it'd be like, "Oh, I love you, dog," but no homo or something. You know what I mean? It would, you'd also always have to like, you know, interject that in there because you want to be seen as sissy or something along that lines. But there's movies like, I don't know if you've ever seen "I Love You, Man." Actually, it's a pretty funny Paul Rudd movie. Um,
Oh, no, I haven't.
yeah, it's really kind of like heartwarming and funny. I like that movie. That's one example of a kind of a romance sort of relationship where one person doesn't have any guy friends, where he's about to get married but doesn't have any best men, so he'd like to go out and meet some people. So he met this guy at a home show that he was doing. He's a real estate person, and the guy, I think it's Jason. I forget the guy's last name, but he was I forget the show he was on, anyways. But yeah, they ended up having a great friendship, and it is really touching, for a guy, things like that, But that's media kind of encouraging a healthy masculinity with that, and I think that helps change people's perceptions, of what masculinity could be, should be, and is. And I think some people are afraid of that uh, in media or in public spheres, I'll say, because now there's a lot of just stuff going on in the news that I see all the time, and they're trying. Some certain people would like to bring it back to the way it was, where women should be barefoot in the kitchen raising babies, and men do the work, and bring it back to, like, call it colonial days, kind of a thing where it's all a big spectrum out there of thoughts on what masculinity is, what femininity is, what gender is altogether. People have an idea that genders are specifically this and that, one or the other, very dualistic, black or white, woman or man. But there's a lot more than that in the world. There's quite the spectrum going on. There's women who are more in touch with their masculine nature, and they could be gay, they could be straight. Either way, they're just kind of more in touch with their masculine nature. And men on the other way, too, who could be more in touch with their feminine nature, and they could be gay, they could be not. It doesn't matter. But there is quite the spectrum of gender identity, and I think that should be recognized because all points are valid. There's people that are opposed to that. They think it should just be, you know, this is man, that is woman, and that's it. And if you don't fit in with that, then GTFO or something like that. But I think that it's a toxic culture. But I think there's a lot of people who are, more open to the idea that it's not quite what it seems on surface. Like, everybody has a right to their own opinion, and that however they feel about themselves is completely valid.
How has toxic masculinity affected men and women and all genders alike? How how has yeah, how have you seen toxic masculinity affect our society and gender norms?
Um, I see it nowadays, of course, in like Christian nationalism. That's not the only one. There's also other faith organizations who say that women should be this and men should be that, and these are old, antiquated concepts. You know what I mean? We don't live in that same age that we used to live in. Back when, say, Jesus walked the earth, or Muhammad, or whoever. If they in fact did. We don't live in those times, but that people are insistent that that's just the way it is. But you're telling people that they shouldn't be the way that they are, is what toxic masculinity or ideas of that are, or femininity, or whatever the case might be. But people, don't need to identify with that. Not so much. I'm a man, and I feel like I'm in touch with my masculine nature, but in a healthy way. I feel like I'm try to be giving and generous and thoughtful. It, you know, it's hard to put it in just terms of masculinity, but I feel like if with toxic masculinity, there's a denial of your feminine nature, which everybody has, you know, and I feel like it's incorporating both sides of the coin um, fully into our lives and embracing all of that. I can feel my feminine nature with caring and creating and seeing babies that are cute, or appreciating how somebody looks, or there's all types of things that for some reason it's been looked at negatively for a man to say certain things, you know what I mean, or to you don't want to come off as feminine or something, but this is just somebody expressing themselves, really, at the end of it. Doesn't have to be put into those terms, but we humans are slowly evolving creatures, and I think we are slowly evolving, but there's still some people that will like to hang on to that the old way.
It feels like the old ways are crumbling, and it definitely, it's really interesting. It feels like it's really quite amazing, honestly. It's really quite amazing to be able to witness a world more accepting of all of the different blends of human and to see the soul past any and all gender norms. It is really, it is really truly beautiful to see.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it is nice, like I had a thought and then I just kind of lost it. I apologize.
All good.
Yeah, it'll come back to me if I stop thinking about it. But
Yeah.
I at the core of it all, we're just experiencing what it is to be human. We have differences in physiologically a little bit. Men aren't able to carry a baby and things like that. There's a couple of different physical differences within us, but in our soul and in our consciousness, aside from the hormones and things that sort of make a difference with that, but all we are is just sitting here being aware of our surroundings all day, and that's all we really are. We're not technically this body or anything like that. We're just taking in experience. And so when if you look at it, things through a strictly gender based roles or whatever, then you're kind of missing the fullness of what the experience could be. You're limiting yourself.
It really does put a division between oneself and other people when we restrict our thinking, our way of thinking to gender norms. Kind of really growing up in the military too, because I technically started at 17. I've been able to see many different leaders, men and women, and the leaders whom I wasn't most inspired by, they tend to be more in touch with their feminine energy, more so than the vast majority of men. There were I mean, it's the military. There were mostly male leaders. Even a commander, even a female commander, in touch more with her feminine nature, the ability to nurture leadership one on one with people and truly be able to show their vulnerability and how much they care for and love the people whom they're leading. And taking divine action truly based on what they believe the others could benefit from. Doing things specifically, even changing systems that they once built, being able to release their pride, release their pride, reflect within themselves, and do it for the potential for collective growth. There's so much hope in the future because I truly do believe that the toxic masculinity of the military is dying. When I was in criminal investigation division, it was dying already. There is a new rule passed that then allows women to wear butted, what do you call the like the small earrings with
Oh,
their
like a studs.
stud to wear studded earrings with the green suit, not the physical fitness uniform, but but the green suits. The men who were more upset about that were the ones who were a little bit more on the toxic masculine side. The
Sure.
ones, yeah, the ones who are more traditional and authoritarian. As I continue to grow, I'm sure more and more things will shock me in this personal journey in realizing how physical matter really has no matter. Yeah, every single person is just how they want to be, how they truly want to be. It's really interesting to see how society is reflecting all the gray area between black and white. I've heard some people say that they felt like they were a woman in their past lifetime or they're a man in their past lifetime. And kind of also recognizing soul lineage potentially, if it's true that we've lived many different lifetimes, that maybe our souls remembering certain lifetimes of ours and kind of bringing that memory back to help you in the present moment with something that you're going through. I truly thought at one point I was a Chinese warrior. I truly feel that way. Like I was a guy. I truly felt like I was a guy and I was a Chinese warrior. And this has changed as well. As I've continued on this journey, I've felt different energies of, oh, like I feel like a mother right now. I feel like a mother who lost her child, but I don't have a child. So it's quite interesting how maybe you could say parallel realities of past experiences kind of help you strengthen these masculine and feminine energies based on recollection of remembering your memories, your soul's memories. I don't know.
And I don't profess to have anything like known about anything, but I've in some of the spiritual studies that I've been involved in, what resonates with me is that we've lived every lifetime, that it's not like my soul has lived in certain forms throughout time, and your soul has lived in certain forms throughout time. I feel like we've all lived every lifetime, and that we do have the ability to access these prior lives, or maybe future lives even, that because time isn't really important in that whole grand scheme of things anyways, but we have the access to the energies of all the different forms that we could inhabit it, and that they will come to us when needed, and we'll have tapped into that energy of a prior or future form.
That's very true. We are all, yeah, I do agree with that too. In regards to embracing the divine masculine energy, how does this work with like the mind and heart? How can we embrace the divine masculine within our heart and within our mind? And how can we have that mind heart coherence to establish a healthy divine masculine part of us?
I think for me, it's being present and aware in the moment, and with that comes sometimes some uncomfortable truths that you might find throughout the day. For example, I might act aggressively towards something. Maybe somebody touched a nerve and brought out some need for me to feel like I need to defend myself in some kind of a way, and I might express that in some way. Women and men that do the same thing, but I feel like in masculinity terms, it's a trait where you don't want to be seen as punked or something. You know what I mean? You should defend your manhood. I feel like if I'm just paying attention and I'm present in the moment, and I feel that kind of sort of a toxic energy sort of come up where I feel like I need to defend or protect or elevate my ego status in some kind of a way, just being aware of that alone is enough to kind of soften the sharp edges that come with kind of toxic masculinity. I think it just depends on where your focus is. If my focus is on being seen as somebody who's manly and tough or whatever, then I'm going to change the way I do things to be perceived in that way. So I'm trying to manipulate other people to see me a certain way that I'm not even seeing myself in that way, because I have to be seeing myself as less than in order to have to prop myself up. So it just comes down to, for me, just kind of being aware and being centered in the present moment, to be able to see those things as they pop up, and then I can choose whether to take that road or not. And more often now, I don't have that road. That road is just, I can see it, I can feel it there. It's in the past that I've operated in sort of ways like that, but I don't have to like continue with that.
Why do you think a lot of people tend to have their guard up? Like, how can you tell when you're truly being, yeah, how can you be authentic while having a healthy, strong, divine masculine, at the same time not feeling like you have to put your guard up around other people? What's that fine line of protection with yourself and interaction with people around you?
Yeah, you're right. It is a fine line, because there are people who would like to take advantage of whatever situation to improve their own situations. There's people that will take advantage of people, right? There's people who are looking to stroke their ego by making themselves appear better, so they might create a situation, distort the facts of a matter or whatever the case might be, to create an appearance for themselves. And in turn, you might, be perceived as a certain way, I don't know, less than or less masculine or whatever the case might be. So there's, a natural want to sort of defend yourself. But when, if you are able to look at every other person that's out there and just see it in them that they are the same as you, we're just here having a human experience. We're just, that's it. Like there is no real ego to protect if you look at things in that way. So even if I'm like slighted or somebody says talk some smack about me or something like that, that's something that at one point in time would have sent me over the edge. Like it would drive me nuts if somebody didn't like me for whatever reason. It would drive me freaking crazy. Like, oh, and I take it personally. Like there's something wrong with me. Like there's something, I was a very broken sort of a soul at one point in time. But now it's like, that doesn't matter. It's obviously they're projecting something from within themselves onto me. If they don't like me, it's because there's something within themselves that they see in me that they would like to change, or there's something that they're trying to defend. It's never personal, because all we can do is look at another person and project our guess on who that person is. But we'll never know. I'll never know inside of Victoria's mind what you're thinking, feeling. Like I might have a pretty decent guess, a fair amount of the time, sometimes, but nobody can ever know your full experience, So there's a respect with that we all have our individual personal experience that nobody else can have. And that's a gift, that's the blessing of life, that we all have these different points of view and everything. But, you know, uh, there is no ego to protect if I see you as just me, which is really what it is. That's what it is. Just you in a different body. You're me in a different body, rather, and somebody who's talking smack about me, they're just defending something about themselves. It's hard to take it personally these days, and I hope that continues, because it's a healthy way to be. I don't have a self, an ego to like defend and protect, because it doesn't matter. They're only projecting their own thoughts onto me.
It feels very business oriented and propaganda and narrative. So, living in a country that is kind of built on corporation, yeah, it's so much work to hold up a billboard sign of, because regardless, people have their opinions and they have a right to their own opinions. And every single part of our psyche, of our consciousness, is being played out in everything and everyone else. The part of your psyche that doubts you, there are people, or at least one person or something, that's living out there who holds that doubt of yours within them. It's kind of like every single thought, every single part of us is actually living. We've in like a physical embodiment. So do we choose to listen to the person who always doubts us, the part of our psyche who doubts us? And then this goes into energetic alignment. Where do you want to align in your psyche? I want to align with the healthy versions of myself who support me to grow and whom I support to grow too. And then it becomes mutual transformation. And it becomes more of a journey of getting to know each other more and realizing how similar we are, even in our differences. Seeing how the parallels of what we've learned in our past, we can actually see that within each other. It's really beautiful. It truly is beautiful. I'm in kind of a beginning stage of realigning. or aligning to, you could say, a healthy version of my psyche. So it is really, I'm truly grateful to have these experiences, to be able to talk with this with other people. So yeah, it's awesome. It's really awesome. And I hope to, you know, hope to stay accountable.
No, that's great. I'm happy to hear that. I also feel like I'm sort of new to this personal accountability, if you will, as well, because we do have choices in how our life will be and how we treat ourselves and how we experience things. And I do some coaching with people, and some of the people that I've worked with have a hard time with breaking out of a habit of feeling like there's something wrong with them or something. Like there's a history and something happened, and they feel like they're kind of always sort of regressing or going through these cycles of doing good and not doing good. And I'm feeling good today and I'm not feeling good the next minute, and kind of get attached to their thought process within that. But there's so much more that they could be doing if they didn't just focus on that one aspect, of how I feel. How am I feeling right now? Um, so it's important for us to sort of take an account of where we're at, what we're doing, and what we'd like to be doing, what would make us feel more whole. What would make us feel just generally, creative, productive. We all have choices and how we'd like to live, that are outside of the what we think is possible. And I think that's part of having that honest approach with oneself and be able to take a personal accountability for the good stuff and the bad stuff too. As far as if I'm exhibiting patterns of like unhealthy habits or something, like I'm drinking to avoid um feeling whatever in the moment. I might feel anxious or something, let's say. Also, I'll have a few drinks or whatever, for example, like, and I feel like that's an unhealthy avoidance thing that I do. It's just, sort of a numbing, right? Where I'm afraid to just kind of experience whatever the heck is going on. But now I can look at that and say, I don't need to go back to that pattern. I can choose to just experience whatever it is I'm experiencing, and it'll be okay. I don't have to have any complaints about whatever I'm experiencing. And so, like, I work with them on sort of changing those inner paradigms, the limits that we impose upon ourselves in regards to the way that we can experience life.
What you said made me realize how much I've not enjoyed the present moment in the past and even recently, because of feeling like I shouldn't be here, or I shouldn't be where I am right now, and realizing that it's a gift in itself to live and to be experiencing what we're experiencing now. Um, it's another thing though too. It's like one thing to remind yourself, oh, you got to be grateful, you got to enjoy the present moment. My mind tends to do that a lot. Oh, you got to be grateful, you got to enjoy it. And that actually might be like the toxic masculinity telling me what to do, but it's really more about tapping into the heart and feeling it, like feeling life breathe, like just feeling. I've never used to feel energies like this ever, until I began awakening, becoming consciously aware. But feeling quite literally feeling life breathe, watching the trees sway, watching the sun glimmer past the trees, watching this fly that's kind of flying around in my peripheral view. Oh, there's two of them. Just like the possibilities, the possibilities of what could be is already hope enough to continue living. And that's really where faith comes into. It's like everything that happened to us, times where we felt like we couldn't, there's no way we could move past a situation, no way we can move past a community who might have shunned us, or a flop at work, losing our job, or a relationship. And the feeling of like, man, I don't see past this point. Everything that got us to where we are now, like we always knew we'd be okay. The present version of ourselves told those past versions of ourselves, you're going to be okay. You're going to keep living. You'll find a way out of this. And it does, I will say I've been very unhealthy to myself in restructuring my brain to not have such a toxic masculine um, viewpoint or view mindset, because just military childhood, I've I've heavily been under the influence of toxic masculinity and brought it out into my external environment. For I would say I did the best that I could as a platoon leader and stuff like that. But yeah, looking back at how I was, um, and then going on this awakening, this journey of expanding consciousness, I definitely sabotaged moments of myself where I particularly entrapped myself in a situation in which people hate me. And and I've had to look within myself. There are times where it's like, man, I really did this to myself, and I know I did this to myself. And where is that future? Where's like, there's no way I can move past this. But it's toxic masculinity is really just the absence of compassion, of the fact that you came out of love, you came out of creation. Even if it isn't love, even if there was a terrible situation which caused you to be born, you came out of creation. You're here for a reason, because you're here. And there's no one else like you. There's literally no one else like you. So, what is your best potential for yourself? What do you want to? Your ego is kind of like, it isn't us. Our ego isn't us, but our ego is like, our ego is our child, kind of. Do you support your child? Do you want to watch your child grow? What what would your child thrive best at in this lifetime while you're here? And how can you, what does that healthy security and protection look like? The action that comes from your creativity. What does that look like when your child is thriving in its most exciting and happiest joy? It's awesome. I love it. I love this. Um, yeah, ensuring that I take responsibility, that we all take responsibility for for deciding that we're going to continuously be growing and not regressing. because it's really easy to regress. It's quite addictive to regress, actually. Have you ever felt that it's like quite addictive to be in trauma or to be depressed?
Yeah, these things, the the neural pathways that are formed through trauma sometimes and negative experiences, the the grooves are deep, you know, in that record that plays over and over and over again. And when you see the truth of it, like, hey, I'm in a rut, I'm in this groove, that this track that just keeps on playing over and over and over again. Like, I don't really need to do that anymore. And so you have a paradigm shift, and then you're awakened, right? You're enlightened to the fact that you are living in this sort of a record player tape in your head over and over again. But you come out of that, and then you're awakened, and you can see things through a different light, and live life through a different paradigm. But I think falling back into that groove is probably necessary, and may not always be necessary, but sometimes it's needed. It's like needed to kind of solidify your new change. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that if we do regress, to not beat ourselves up for it, because that's definitely not going to be helpful. But to recognize that, hey, I'm in this situation again. It doesn't have to be all that serious, but you can just recognize where you're at and then continue to grow, So I think sometimes regression is part of growth. As long as you don't, let yourself just continue, you can. There's nobody saying that you can't just regress and go right on back to sleep if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. It's still a valid existence. But we would like more, right? So when you notice that stuff coming up again, like, hey, I'm back to doing the things that I used to do, and I still don't like it. So then you're able to, continue with change and maybe make some more new strides. So it's really cool. Just having that opportunity, and that's what I am really coming into, just appreciating more and more every day, is just that life is just such an opportunity. Each moment, is an opportunity just to experience. And I'm really thankful for that. Not because I feel like I should be, but I really am. Even when it seems really shitty, like when things are just rough, I'm struggling with this or that thing or whatever, things just kind of seem out of sorts. And that's important to appreciate those times too, because my most profound growth moments in my life have come from sheer despair or depression or anxiety or something. Like, my lowest points have been the linchpin that got me going on to a path of growth, so I appreciate all of it, really do. It's a blessing.
I don't really think I have anything else, but is there anything you'd like to wrap up in regards to divine masculinity?
I think I have much more to add. I didn't know I had this much to talk about it in the first place. But it's a fascinating subject to me, because um, the way people run their lives based on their ideas of gender, so masculinity or femininity, or how they should be perceived in those lights. And I think it's become more and more where we're kind of moving beyond that. And one thing I do want to add, like, this what we have going on here with our capitalist structure in the United States. for example. It's been a patriarchy going on through the Western civilization and in Europe and everything like that. But now one good thing about women coming into the workforce and that whole change back in, the 40s and 50s and things like that, if there is a positive with it, I think it could still be possible that people, one person in a family could have the job and the other person could stay home and take care of the kids. That would be great if that was still going on. But anyways, more and more women are being seen and heard, and their voices are out there, and they're I'm ready for a matriarchy. Let women be in charge. They're more in touch with their nurturing nature. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what society really needs, and I hope we go toward that more than the masculine aspect of things, because I think women, along with what you said earlier, are born leaders just as much as men. But you can lead with not so much authority. You can lead with your care and compassion and empathy for others. So I'm appreciative that women have more of a prevalence in today's society, in the workforce, and in politics, and in whatever the case might be, because I think it's necessary to kind of, you know, tamp down the flames of masculinity that seem just the flames get too high sometimes. That's all I wanted to add there.
Really important to add. Yeah. That was a great
Thank,
ending.
well, thank you. As always, it's quite an honor just to be here talking with you, and to anybody else that's listening. Thank you. I'm
It's an
blessed.
honor to be talking with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.